Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to provide an update on Fiji's economic performance and outlook and government's fiscal position. Mr. Speaker, the Fijian economy has shown great resilience despite the global uncertainties caused by factors such as slowing global growth, global inflationary pressures, supply chain disruptions, and escalating geopolitical tensions and geo-economic fragmentation. Despite these ongoing challenges, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to state that our economic fundamentals have strengthened over the years, especially over the last 2 years, and the economy is on a much stronger footing now than what we had inherited 2 years ago. Mr. Speaker, following a growth of 7.5% in 2023, the Fiji economy is now forecast to grow by 3.8% in 2024, higher than the 2.8% growth projected earlier in June this year. Mr. Speaker, there were some very strong reasons for this upward revision by the Macroeconomic Committee, an independent committee chaired by the Governor of the Reserve Bank and include other senior public officials from key agencies. Firstly, the tourism industry, which has been the key driver of Fiji's post-pandemic recovery, has positively surprised us. And Honorable Deputy Prime Minister has constantly talked about this. In the first 10 months, January to October of 2024, visitor arrivals rose by 6.5% when compared to the same period last year. The strong growth in arrivals, Mr. Speaker, is largely driven by higher arrivals from our major tourism source markets, including Australia, where the growth of 4.9%, New Zealand 3.8%, US 8.6%. These three countries, Mr. Speaker, account for 80% of our visitors, and despite some of the economic challenges in these countries, we have not seen any slowdown in numbers. On the contrary, we have seen stronger growth. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to highlight that we have recorded new peaks for visitor arrivals in all the months this year, and we are going to hit a new record again this year, just below, slightly below 1 million tourists. Mr. Speaker, in light of the strong performance in tourism arrivals to date, the forecast for visitor arrivals for this year have been revised up to 6% from an earlier projection of 3% in 2024. In 2025, we are projecting visitor arrivals to grow by 4%, as we expect continuous growth in tourism demand from traditional source markets, coupled with the introduction of Nandi-Dallas flights from next week, which is expected to bring an additional 1,000 visitors on a weekly basis to our shores. Mr. Speaker, given the strong linkages of the tourism industry with the rest of the economy, related sectors such as transport and storage, accommodation, wholesale and retail are also driving higher growth this year. While positive contributions are also expected from finance and insurance, public administration, information and communication, agriculture, manufacturing, real estate, mining and quarrying, and net taxes are also contributing to the overall growth, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to highlight that following the strong public and political support and the business community support for the recent budget, which had sent a very strong message on the stability, consistency, and the transparency and accountability of our economic and social policies, Mr. Speaker, this together with the inclusive style of governance and bipartisanship we have shown Parliament. I want to thank the group of 9 for their bipartisanship. I'm not too sure about the other group, Mr. Speaker. Has helped a lot with improving investor and overall confidence. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the increase in public sector salaries in the recent budget, increase in the national minimum wage from $4 to $4.50 and then $5 from 1st of April, the strategic decision to have increase in government spending in key areas, the higher remittance flows, which is projected to reach around 1.3 billion this year, the tourism-induced pickup in demand and growth in commercial bank lending has helped consumption spending, which has supported business and economic activity. All partial indicators for consumption spending including VAT collections, consumption lending through the financial institutions, and income indicators like PAYE collections, FNPF contribution growth, are showing stronger spending activity. Mr. Speaker, sir, in terms of investment activity, the current indicators suggest a positive outlook for this year. We have recorded a significant increase in business confidence and investment activity, driven by the commencement of large tourism-related projects in the West, also in the North, other major commercial projects across the country, and the implementation of some of the major government capital projects. A key indicator of construction activity, domestic, for example, Mr. Speaker said, domestic cement sales has risen by 11.2% up to September 2024. Furthermore, new lending by commercial banks for investment purposes grew by 25% in the year leading to September 2024, primarily due to an increase in lending for building and construction sector. Mr. Speaker, with the recent groundbreaking of some large projects such as Google and the announcement on the replacement of 4 critical bridges worth over $300 million, the outlook for investment is very optimistic. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, investment activity also continues to progress. Investor confidence is currently high, as evidenced by the new investments and construction happening around the country. I take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank our business and investor community for their very positive engagement, attitude, and helping government in building confidence. For 2025, Mr. Speaker, the growth momentum is expected to continue, and as such, the growth forecast has now been upgraded to 3.4% from an earlier projection of 3%. Again, the services sector will be a key driver of growth on the back of strong tourism activity, followed by industrial and primary sectors. In 2026 and 2027, based on the information at hand, we are projecting a baseline growth of 2.9 and 2.8%, while we may be reverting to the long-term average growth rate of around 3%. Mr. Speaker, the higher growth rate can be achieved easily if we continue improving the business environment for private sector investment, maintain the momentum of economic reforms, ensure the stability of our economic policies, the transparency of our economic policies, and provide confidence through well-crafted, coordinated macroeconomic policies. Inflation, Mr. Speaker, while our economy is showing strong sustainable growth, we must acknowledge the challenges posed by rising global inflation. We have seen an increase in the cost of goods, particularly fuel, food, and transportation. The government is acutely aware of the burden this places on Fijian households, and we are taking necessary measures to alleviate the cost of living. In the 2024-2025 budget, Mr. Speaker, we had announced numerous income-enhancing measures such as increase in minimum wages and civil service salaries. We are continuing with higher social welfare payments, restored pensions for FNPF pensioners that were affected by earlier reforms, provided targeted subsidies for electricity and water, provided back-to-school support for the 2025 school year, fully absorbing the new higher bus fares for students, receiving the transport assistance, providing the highest ever sugarcane price of over $105 per ton, writing of $650 million in TELS debt for over 53,000 families, amongst other things, Mr. Speaker, that we have talked about often. Apart from this, we have maintained the zero-rated VAT on 22 items in the budget. All this, Mr. Speaker, is over $1 billion in support for our vulnerable and disadvantaged. Mr. Speaker, I am happy to report that the annual headline inflation year-on-year rate has fallen from the 4th consecutive month to 0.8% in November 2024. This inflation outcome in November is significantly lower when compared to 5.8% in the November last year, and is also lower than the 3.6% recorded in October this year. November 2024 inflation, Mr. Speaker, is the lowest in 16 months and is driven by lower prices noted in food and non-alcoholic beverages, transport, housing, electricity, water, gas, and other fuels, and clothing and footwear. And year-end inflation for this year is expected to be much lower, Mr. Speaker, than our earlier projection of 3.5%, and is expected to remain stable in the medium term. On balance of payment, Mr. Speaker, maintaining external stability is critical, particularly in a global economic environment characterized by volatility. In recent years, we have seen fluctuations in global commodity prices, shift in trade patterns, changes in investor sentiments. These factors, Mr. Speaker, have had direct implications on our balance of payment. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that through prudent macroeconomic management policies, we have made significant progress in addressing these challenges. Our efforts to diversify exports, attract investment, improve the competitiveness of our industries have begun to bear fruits. And Mr. Speaker, on this, I must thank all my ministerial colleagues.
Can I just, there is some difficulties with the sound system again. Is it now better? Thank you. Proceed.
Is it better now, Mr. Speaker?
I think so.
All right.
Yes, I think it was not a sabotage. I hope not.
Mr. Speaker, let me also say that I'm pleased to report that through our good, as I said, transparent, prudent macroeconomic management, we've made significant progress in addressing some of those global challenges. Our efforts to diversify exports, attract investment, and improve the competitiveness of our industries have begun to bear fruits. And I must say that our ministerial colleagues in different ministries, we're all working together as part of our National Development Plan strategy, and all the sectors are bearing fruits, Mr. Speaker. We have seen an improvement in our trade balance, with export growth driven by key sectors such as agriculture, mining and manufacturing. Additionally, efforts to boost tourism and remittances have contributed positively to our current account position. Mr. Speaker, the current account deficit is forecast to fall to 4.7% of GDP in 2024 from 7.7% in 2023 and is expected to remain below 5% in the medium term. Moreover, the government's commitment to enhancing the external reserves has strengthened our position in managing external shocks and ensuring that we have the necessary resources to meet our international obligations. By focusing on fiscal discipline, foreign exchange management, and strengthening bilateral and multilateral partnerships, we are building a more resilient economy capable of withstanding external pressures. Foreign reserves, our monetary policy and financial sector, Mr. Speaker, again, I am pleased to report that foreign reserves are comfortable at around 3.8 billion at the end of November 2024, equivalent to 6.2 months of retained imports, and are projected to remain adequate over the medium term. The financial sector remains sound and continues to support domestic activity. Private sector credit growth has picked up to 11.2% in October 2024, driven by lending to both business entities and households. Banking system liquidity remained high at around 2.3 billion. Modest, I wouldn't say too high, which is also helping keep interest rate at a near historical lows and support investment growth. Mr. Speaker, compared to interest rates in other countries. Mr. Speaker, our fiscal strategy remains focused on maintaining prudent fiscal management while addressing key development needs. Despite the challenges in the aftermath of the pandemic, we've kept our fiscal deficit under control, with a target to reduce the deficit progressively over the next few years. Mr. Speaker, let me now discuss about the state of government finances and fiscal performance for the first quarter of 2024-2025. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal deficit for 2023-24 narrowed significantly to 3.4% of GDP compared to 7.2% recorded in 2022-2023 financial year. Government total revenue, Mr. Speaker, in 2023-2024 stood at 3.646.2 million, in other words 3.6 billion, 28.1% of GDP, while total expenditure was 31.5% of GDP. The strong performance in revenues underpinned by a strong economy, as well as the combination of well-crafted revenue reforms and expenditure policies that significantly improved the path for fiscal consolidation. The fiscal trend in the first 4 months of this fiscal year has been promising, as we continue to surpass tax collection targets, Mr. Speaker, say. So in the first 3 months of this financial year, Mr. Speaker, say, August to October, government's total revenue collection stood at 1.087.5 million, while total expenditure amounted to 956.3 million. This resulted in a net surplus of 131.2 million, equivalent to 0.9% of GDP. This marks a notable improvement compared to the same period last year, when a net deficit of 21.5 million GDP was recorded. Mr. Speaker, say on a month-to-month basis, tax revenue collections have consistently exceeded the forecast, reaching a total of 885.2 million in the first 3 months. This positive outturn, above by 88.4 million or 11.1%, was primarily driven by stronger collections in all types of taxes, including corporate taxes, PAYE, withholding taxes. Mr. Speaker, said our non-tax revenue was also higher than the projected. So in terms of our overall revenue collections for the first 3 months, it increased by almost $200 million, 196.1 million, or 22% compared to the same period last year. Mr. Speaker, said the total expenditure has also been promising. The first 3 months amounting to 956.3 million, represented 21% of total budgeted spending level in the financial year. This comprised 734.49 million in operating expenditure and 211.6 million in capital expenditure, with a good expenditure mix of 78:22 compared to the same period last year. Mr. Speaker, said the public debt, while a concern for many countries globally, remains sustainable, and we are taking a measured approach to manage it. Government debt stood at 10.3 billion, equivalent to 79.4% of GDP at the end of July 2024. Debt is projected to be around 77.8% of GDP at the end of this financial year. This is a marked decline from the high of 90.7% of GDP in 2021-2022. Mr. Speaker, said at the end of October 2024, government's total debt stood equivalent to 75.4% of GDP. The debt mix comprised 63.7% in domestic debt and 36.3% in external debt during the review period. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by saying that, as you heard, all the macroeconomic indicators, whether we talk about our debt management, whether we talk about our revenue management, whether we talk about our investment policies, the mix of the policies that we put in place in the 2023-2024 budget, in the 2024-2025 budget, is actually working and showing significant signs of the fact that we have set the economy on a right trajectory. So in summary, Mr. Speaker, I would say that our economy is doing much better than earlier anticipated. Consumption and investment and spending have both picked up. Tourism industry is on track for a record year, and we expect similar trends in 2025 and 2026. Inflation has eased to 0.8% in November 2024. Foreign reserves stood at about 3.8 billion. Interest rates remain low. Government revenue collections have surpassed projections for last financial year and for the last 4 consecutive months. Debt levels have been reduced to below 80% now. Risks to growth are balanced, Mr. Speaker, while natural disasters, global conflict, geopolitics, slowdown in trading partners pose downside risk. There are upsides to tourism with the Dallas flight and other new routes. Pick up in investments as confidence level continues to improve, and the easing of the labor market as outward migration and resident departures have also slowed down. So all this put together, Mr. Speaker, is good news for the economy, good news for the country. And as I said earlier, we want to make sure that the result of this good news also flows to the ordinary people. And as I said, we are spending almost $1 billion in targeted expenditure, whether it's from agriculture to social welfare, to education, to health, and it puts us in a very strong position, Mr. Speaker, say, to now start preparing for the next budget, 2025, 2026, and there'll be more good news in the next budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Professor Biman Prasad, for your statement.